morning, everyone. How you doing?
Good.
MAGFest, day 2. We're tired, but you know what? We love video games and video game collecting. So this is Video Game Collecting 101. Woo! Yeah. Yay. 60 minutes of video game collecting tips, horror stories, and the like with Joey Desena.
That's so sweet.
From the Game Chasers, we have Jay Hatfield.
Hatfield.
I couldn't remember. I was like, and then his first ever panel and his first ever convention, my buddy Ian Ferguson. That was way more applause than I think he should deserve. And myself, I'm Pat Contri. And Billy is sick and could not make it.
Bill, he's not because of drinking though. Not tonight, anyways. But I know. Y'all want me to call him? Y'all can say, "Fuck off." Or...
All right. So just real quick, I showed this I think last year. Well, you know what's been going on in video game collecting? It's at its the highest it's ever been, most popular it's ever been. It's sort of tipping point for video game collecting was about 2006. A lot of collectors sort of pegged that as sort of the point where people started to really take notice. But then really the past 3 years, about 2009, really 2010 for sure, the game prices started increasing dramatically. So it's only been about 3.5, 4 years. NES is still probably the most popular system to collect. Ian probably agrees.
I would agree. NES I think in the past year or so, N64 has become very popular. It's reasonably easy enough to get a full set of N64 games, and I think people who are maybe in their early 20s have started to pick that one up a lot.
Yeah, I was going to say that just kind of makes sense, right? When kids play with a certain system and they actually get to an age where they, in theory, are making money, they want to go relive the past, and so that's why these things come in cycles. You had NES, and then Super Nintendo mostly, and then now N64.
Yeah.
Pretty soon GameCube and such will probably be more.
The rule of thumb is like about 3 console generations back is when that system becomes desirable to collect. It's not a set rule, but in general, that's what happens. So you're talking about like 15 years later, all of a sudden people are like, I want to go back and play that stuff. Because the kids are older, they have disposable incomes, they get nostalgic for their childhood. So
Get those PS2 games now.
And then a couple of systems have passed, I'd say a year and a half, 2 years, have come on, and people are like, I want to get this system. So TurboGrafx 16, I'd say 3 years ago, no one cared about the TurboGrafx 16 3 years ago. Very few people did. It was such a sort of niche system. Boutique system, if you will. And then Sega Master System also has been on the upswing, and I have no idea why. Because no one played either system in the U.S. really.
Well, I have a theory, because people collect as much as they want for like the NES, and they're like, well, what else is from this time? Hey, Master System.
That's always been my theory. You move on to the next closest analogy. You go from NES to another 8-bit system.
Do you want to take? Is there a question?
Yeah, I'll take questions later.
Okay.
They have to listen to us right now.
They have to listen. So, what's going on with the state of collecting? Well, obviously, there's tons of eBay sellers. I mean, again, before 2006, you might have maybe just one person or 2 people on eBay or 3 that really dedicate themselves to just reselling games. Most people selling at that point before were just selling stuff they collected, were collectors themselves, or they had extras, or they were just using it as garage sale eBay. Then all of a sudden, people see it as a second income or a hobby income, and that's basically what happened, which also led to the rise in prices as well at that point. There's tons of forums and sites dedicated to retro game collecting. There's a lot out there. I can go through them, but I'm tired. So yeah, there's mom and pop game stores popping up. So interesting what happened about 2003, 2004. They shut down all the Funko-Land used game sales from like Super Nintendo era and before, N64 era and before. They liquidated them at all the stores once they were bought by GameStop. So there was I'd say this 4 or 5 year lull in between where you could find retro games in stores, because that was the main way you can go. You can always go to Software Etc., which they were an electronic boutique. They had some used games at the time, but they were all bought out by, I think, GameStop, right? Did GameStop buy them all out?
I think GameStop bought literally every other game store out.
And well,
like Babbage's and all that
all
kind
the stuff, people selling even PC games.
Yeah.
So, again, around 2008, 2009, when this started getting popular, you had mom and pop stores start opening up. And I always see people on Facebook saying, I want to open up a brick and mortar store. Ian works. Maybe you can give a little insight on that.
Think real hard before you decide to open a brick and mortar store. It's something you do because you're passionate about it. It's not something you do because it's easy, and it's really not something you do to make a lot of cash. You do it because you love it. Well, I'll touch more on the other things I was going to say when we get to that portion of it.
That's good, Ian. That was good. All right.
Ian is very, very nervous right now.
Yeah.
So everyone stare at him.
Everyone stare. 3, 2, 1. Everyone stare at Ian.
I don't see any of you. I can't see any of you.
All right. And then, so with any of the maturation of any sort of collectible, usually you have grading come involved. So baseball cards, stamps, coins, comic books, things that were the actual appearance and condition directly affect the value, because that's where you're looking at the coin and identifying it. You're looking at the comic, which is basically like artwork. And so it's happened with video games the past 3-4 years.
Here's my issue with it. You can pick up a graded baseball card, look at the front, look at the stats on the back, and be like, well, that's a fine baseball card, and put it back where you got it from, and it's safe and protected. You can't play the video game that's inside the box once it's been graded. It's very different from grading something like a coin.
Or if
a
it's in
stamp.
Lucite. If you put the video game in Lucite, then you really can't play it.
Well, that's what it means. When they grade it, so basically what VGA is from the CGA, the Collectible Grading Authority. So they do toys, they do, they're an offshoot of the comic guys, I believe. But so you send them your toy, your video game, they will grade it with their quote-unquote experts, which is why it's weird, because no one knows who the hell these people are that are grading these things. It's like in a cloud somewhere. And then they put it in the plastic, and the cases are great. You can get them, you can buy them. The cases are actually really nice. They're UV protected, they're almost airtight, and they send them back, and then you get your nice grade. You cannot open the game, and then basically, in theory, it's for people that are collecting sealed games. They do grade unsealed games and prototypes and NWC cards, which is really stupid, but I won't get into that right now. So it's for people that are into sealed collecting. They want to make sure their sealed game is perfect or it doesn't have tears, and so they do that. But the problem is that people have used it to speculate, and they see it as, okay, just because I take a $30 sealed NES game, like, I don't know, Anticipation or something, just because I get it sealed, I'm going to try to turn it around and sell it for $300, just because it's graded. So it's an artificial inflation. It's not like comic books, because in comic books, the values of grades are on a tier. So like Amazing Spider-Man #1, 2.0, and that's a defined 2.0, what that means. There's actually like definitions for each grade of a comic, what that entails. It's very specific actually, even though there is some leeway with how you grade. So the values go up for each grade. For the game collecting stuff, it's like VGA 85 plus, VGA 75, VGA 65. No one knows what the hell those levels really mean. No one really cares about it. They just want to say, I want to get a VGA 85 plus because that's more awesome and worth more. So what it's done is that it's actually, I don't care if you collect sealed games. What it has done is putting all these vultures into that market artificially to try to take these sealed games out of there, slab them, put them back on eBay, and create this artificial sealed game market. That's why I'm against it.
There's actually an interesting side point to that, because it takes these games, these playable media, and it basically makes them art at that point. They're kind of useless as anything else.
It's making them art, but what you're actually looking at is just a box. The game is what's the digestible consumer product, is the actual video game. That's really the difference between that and a coin or a stamp.
One of the big differences is that these games, and this is something everyone should probably keep cognizant of, is that these games do not last forever as playable media. So a lot of the solid state cartridges and such will last longer.
They'll last a while.
Than optical media.
CD games will fail. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, CD games, DVD-based games, on average, they're expected to have a life of 10 to 15 years, and then suddenly you're not going to be able to read the data on them anymore because they just degrade. Justin, you look so sad.
Well, it's a little more than 10 years. It's I think 25. Yeah. So basically, the earliest CDs that came out like in the mid 80s, a lot of those don't work anymore. Yes. Like the earliest CDs. So
and cartridges, which are based on solid state, technology.
Chips. Joey, I got a question on that.
Yes.
So like the CD-based games, is it really dependent on how much they're played?
No, they just degrade. It's just the plastic kind of degrades.
So if I opened up like a factory sealed Tekken 3,
it'll just fail after a while. And the same thing with cartridges. Those will last longer because they're a little bit more stable. Are you okay, Ian?
Well, he said a fat, greasy Tekken 3. I don't know.
Tekken 3's
Flexed
awesome.
by
What do you
that.
want me to do?
What makes it fat and greasy?
So cartridges will last a few.
Factory seal.
Oh, I thought you said
Yeah, I was gonna say what? I
Fat and greasy
ignored,
Tekken 3?
I ignored what you just said
That's why
there.
no one said anything. I was like, what's wrong with you?
So
Ian?
and so cartridges will last probably a few decades more, but give it 50 years, all these NES games more likely than not will not work. You see that with battery backup.
Don't say
Already.
things like that, Joey.
Sorry.
I'll cry when all my NES games fail.
My point is that at what point do these things just become art, and that's something that we haven't as a collecting body.
Well, yeah, that's
had
what's
to deal with
interesting.
yet,
What's
but at some
interesting is
point it
that
will
I
be.
put it like this. I don't want to. This isn't a go bash graded games thing, but any guy you talk to, like if you go up to Howard Phillips or Nate Robinson, do you think those guys, the guys actually created the games we love, do you think they like sealed collecting? They'll be like, look at you like you're nuts because you're not enjoying what they actually created the game for at that point. You might as well then go and invite the people that just did the art, which is good art, designing the art for the game boxes, and have them speak at conventions.
Are you saying you open a factory sealed game when you run across one?
What's that?
Are you saying you open a factory sealed game when you run
I'm not
across one?
saying that. I'm saying I'm not going to center myself on that. I have opened a sealed game. I have opened sealed games. You're right.
I try to get, if I find something factory sealed, I'll leave it closed, but I'll try to find something that I can play. So
Makes sense.
And then the last thing
I'll
is
wind up with two.
prototype collecting is the hottest it's ever been. You used to be able to get an NES prototype for like $80, $100, maybe $50 for a crappy game. Not anymore. Because what's going on is that there's this, sort of like cottage industry popping up where, they reproduce prototypes. I'm not going to get into the legality of it because it's not legal to do it. But no one really cares.
But no one cares, yeah.
No one cares. People do it for games that aren't released. So what happens is, what that does is this. It creates bidding wars and artificially increases the prices for that too. Because before a $100 prototype, now people are out trying to outbid each other so they can try to make thousands of dollars off a prototype. And it's unfortunate for two reasons. One, again, it's not legal. The second, it's harder to get those into the public domain. So there are collectors like Frank Cifaldi, Steve Lynn, very nice guys. They will spend a lot of money on these prototypes, but they will dump the ROM publicly and release it and make no money off it.
Yeah.
And that's really the right thing to do at the end of the day, because they don't own it. The company that owns it actually legally still owns that prototype. They can go after them if they really wanted to. But again, it's cool. If you want to buy a repro game, that's fine. I bought a repro of Mr. Gimmick US prototype game. That's fine. But there's profit involved with prototypes now more so than ever.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's on fire. Retro game collection. I forgot I had that. So yeah, we are not in a buyer's market right now for collecting games. So my recommendation is to almost don't start if you haven't.
Bye.
Yeah.
Everyone can go now.
But why are we in such not a buyer's market right now?
Because it keeps getting more and more popular and everyone wants to get into it. I don't know which feeds what, but people walk around, there's the t-shirts, there's the marketing, there's the merchandising. When a lot of people got started in collecting, for instance, it was just something you did. You had the money to go get, the NES games that you never played. And
That's what was a decade ago.
So the market formed around the fact that there were collectors. You start getting reproduction systems and t-shirts and little tins in the shape of NES controllers, and more people see these things, they're reminded of them, and they want to get into it. More people who get into it, the more the prices go up. I think one of the things that really affects the fact that it's not a buyer's market is a lot of people go through eBay. And eBay is not an auction site anymore. I mean, it technically is, but everyone does buy it nows. And the impulsive purchasing of buy it nows for what something may not actually go for at auction is really driving the price upwards.
And I've had arguments on websites with collectors that have been collecting for a long time.
You've had arguments? What?
Yes, I like arguing about this stuff. That really also was a tipping point in terms of prices, because before, an auction really is the best way to define the market price. You have people in a room or online to say, I'm willing to pay $10 for that, I'm willing to pay $12, $2 more, that's the price. What happens then is that you get like a game, especially a game that there's not that many of, like Kid Clown, for example. The example I always use, because it was a game that, it's not extremely rare, it is hard to find. And for like 2 years on eBay, there was only like $45 buy it nows, $40 buy it nows, and I'm like, I am not paying that buy it now. But if I really wanted the game at that point, that was my only choice. So what I did is I waited like a year and a half for an open auction and got the game for $12. So that was really the market defining to me what the price of that game was.
Yeah.
But it's unfortunate because now what you have is people not only trying to corner the market and buy all the rare games, and then you'll see them. You'll see all the pictures of, like, you go on eBay, you search for a rare game. You'll see the same background for like 3 or 4 of this rare game, and I don't know how you get 4 of these rare games. I don't know. It's like, how do you do that? You don't naturally. You have to search them out. So what it does is that it sets an artificial price point that does not exist. They're trying to do that, and it is collusion with other sellers.
And that does drive me nuts when you go into a store or even a place at a convention, and you know they're looking up the prices of buy it nows, and that's what they set their price at. And it's like that's artificial.
Yeah, and so it does that, and then also you have these same guys that, quote unquote, have to protect the price of their products, and they will then drive the prices up on any auction that comes up. So then eventually the price will match the buy it nows, so then everyone loses. Only they win, because then the person buying the game is then in this marketplace where now the auctions are going up to where the buy it nows are. And I know there's like economics involved in supply and demand, but it's just, at the end of the day, it's kind of crappy.
There's a lot of artificial. It's not pure supply and demand. It's not pure capitalism. I have one more thing to add, though, as to I think why in the past few years in particular, collecting has kind of exploded across everything. Shut up.
I thought you were going to blame us, is what I thought you were going to do. So.
Okay. You have these news stories for things like when stadium events got sold for over about $20,000 like 3 or 4 years ago, and that was plastered across like Wired and Kotaku, and it's like, oh look, it's kind of like that. It artificially creates this sense in the general populace.
That was bad.
That oh my God, you might have hidden treasure in your basement. You need to collect these games, and then they're going to rise in value. Blah blah blah. And everyone gets really freaked out about it, like comic books in the '90s, where everything was collector's edition.
Yeah.
Artificially.
And that almost ruined the entire industry.
Yeah.
Now, it was a huge crash in
Well,
comic books.
it's not just that. You got like shows like Storage Wars, when some dumbass is on there talking about a model 001 Nintendo that's worth 10 G's or some shit. I'm like, well, I got $50,000 sitting in my bedroom then. Or you got shows like Pawn Stars.
So what happened was, it was February 2010. It was February 2000. Oh, asshole. It was February 2010, and a woman cleaned out her closet, and it was like a Nintendo and like 10 games. And one of the games was Stadium Events, which is the hardest to find licensed Nintendo game because Nintendo had it pulled from the market after a few months, and so it sold for like $18,000 on eBay. Or Yahoo Auctions, when Yahoo Auctions was still around, I think, at the end. Anyway, so the point is that after that, that was the first like mainstream sort of, wow, video games are worth a lot of money, and that was another tipping point, 2010 February. And everyone, there's people on forums like, wow, this is great, this is legitimizing our hobby. I said, no, it's not.
It kills it.
Yeah.
It's always a fun day in the store after a news story like that hits. And, if a 47-year-old woman walks in with a McDonald's cardboard box full of, Top Gun, Double Dribble, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and with a smug look, she drops them on the counter, and she's like, what can I get for these? I'm like, well, cash or credit, ma'am? She's like, well, cash, of course. And I'm like, okay, well, we have maybe $10 here. And she loses her shit. She's like, you can't take me for this. I saw on blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I have 15 copies of this game in the back. I promise you, I'm not
I don't need another bases
games.
loaded too. I don't need it. It's also bad because you have people try to scam people. I did an article on my site where I actually did a nationwide Craigslist search the next week after that news article came out, and there were literally hundreds of people trying to scam people into saying either I had stadium events for sale to screw with people, or my kid when he was 6 and was dying and he loved this game stadium events, so I'm looking to spend $10 on one. And just people, it was just awfulness. It doesn't legitimize a hobby. What it does is it brings vultures into it. That's what really happens when a news story like that happens.
It kills the hobby for the collector is what it does.
I get calls when stadium events things hit, and people these are the ones that drive me nuts. Luna Video Games. Yeah, you guys sell retro games? Yes, we do. I'm looking for one. I remember it when I was a kid. I don't know if you guys might have it laying around. It's called Stadium Events. I've gotten that exact call before. I'm like, no, I don't have Stadium Events just laying around, and I hang up because they're hoping to find it for $5. They're hoping to use a phrase from your book. They're hoping to catch someone slipping on a Stadium Events in 2013. It's not going to happen.
And why is it not going to happen? Because people have smartphones. They have price guide apps that didn't exist a few years ago.
Yeah, I go into lots of Goodwill nowadays, and I've gone into Goodwill and they have a computer right behind the counter with pricecharting.com up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's like they know, the cat's out of the bag. It's very hard to find people. You're more likely to find someone willing to give a good deal nowadays. They know what they have, they're willing to give a good deal, rather than they have no clue what they have.
Yeah,
I think.
Which is why on here, really the best place to find games still. If you want to collect, go collect. I'm not saying not to collect. What I'm saying is, be careful. So flea markets, garage sales, your friends, trading with friends.
I think friends is the best way to do it, especially with something like. Why are you touching me? Especially with something that hasn't blown up yet. Well, even with NES, if you get in good with a group of people, you can get an expensive game from a buddy for relatively inexpensive. I got my Dracula X for $50 because I just have a friend who was able to do that. If you have a bunch of NES doubles, trade with your buddies. Like, you can fill in huge gaps in your collection that way.
I actually just
gaps in
traded-
your soul.
on this yesterday, actually, I traded a Contra Force for a Tengen Tetris and a Chiller from Scott here. So.
Oh,
Yeah, see.
I don't think we have it on there, but I would also throw in generally general conventions, unfortunately, like this one, where there's a lot of different things going on. It's not just retro video game centered. Not the best place to find deals. Not to say you can't find some. There's one or two good tables here, but places like Pat and Jay and I have gone to the Portland Retro Gaming Expo in Oregon the past couple of years. By far the best deals you're going to find because every seller there is some form of a collector, and they know what they have, and they're more willing to
As far as
just
convention
play.
goes, definitely.
But
the best.
but even in the past year, I guess we're going for free comps again, mentioning Portland Retro Gaming Expo. This year versus last, there were more sellers with higher price. Even in the past year,
So you
it's
still need to be
increased.
careful, but
Yeah, but
if you go to
don't go to Comic Con and look for retro games. That's what we're saying.
if you go to a convention completely centered around retro video games and there's a lot more competition, you're going to find a lot better chance of finding good deals. And then, again, you're not going to catch anyone slipping there, but I got Harvest Moon in the box for Super Nintendo for $80.
Oh, look at me.
Yeah.
Ian, how much do you care?
I'll show it to you later.
Yeah, some do's and don'ts. Collect because you like video games. You like certain systems. You like genres. You want to collect every Castlevania title.
Can we
Don't.
change that from a bonus to a requisite, actually?
Well, that's a little debatable about some collectors don't play their games. It's not a requirement. I do. Play some.
You play all 15,000 of them?
I don't have 15,000 games. I don't have that.
14,000.
Don't collect to be a speculator because Ian will kick you in the groin, probably if that happens. There's plenty. Hey, you want to speculate on stuff? How about the stock market? Gold is a good investment.
Bitcoins.
Stay away from my hobby, please. That's all I'm asking.
This is all about Pat.
It's all about me. It's all about me and my mindset of the world. Try to get deals at flea markets, garage sales, and trade with game collectors. That really is a good way of doing it because they're in the same boat as you. And there are nice people out there, Ian. There are nice people. I know you work in a game shop, but
It darkens his soul.
It colors things.
and this is unfortunate. Next one. People that try to get into collecting to be like a know-it-all or look down on other people trying to get into it. There's a lot of people that are like elite collector elitists, I'll say, that just because you don't know something and they know it. And Ian, you probably have some good stories about this.
Well, I'm not going to get into a huge story, but what's even worse than a know-it-all collector is a know-it-all collector who doesn't know jack shit about anything. This guy came in one day and he's just like, you can always tell the fake collectors because they drop the word collecting like every other sentence. And, he buys a stack of games and I go to clean his games out for him and he freaks out. He wants to know what I'm doing with the Q-tip. I said, well, sir, I'm cleaning your games before they leave the store. And he's like, well, how do you do that? And you have to understand, he's been talking to me for half an hour about how big of a collector he is, and he doesn't clean his games.
Yeah, but a collector and a gamer are two different things, though. Maybe you don't play them.
They can be different things.
But it shows a lack of knowledge of what you're doing.
What I'm
I
doing.
agree with you. I completely
Yeah.
agree. You should.
Like you should know how to clean an NES game if you own 1,000 NES games. That's all. Or it's even I'm not trying to bash on people that sell games, but the people that get into it. That one of the reasons why I don't like people that get into it for a fly-by-night things because they don't know anything usually. about the games they're selling. They just know what the price is. So I've had people that to me say like, oh yeah, you hear about that NWC cart, right? The one with Excite Bike on it. I'm like, yeah, I don't think Excite Bike's on a Nintendo World Championship
It's the one
cart.
from the Wizard. It's got Mario 3, correct?
So it's just weird. That's all. And do it because it's fun. Once it stops being fun, don't do it. There's been many a collector that has gotten into it as a fad, and they go on eBay and literally they'll go on forums and be like, I picked up these 100 games in the past week and a half, and they're the ones that a year later are cleaning out their collection and are not doing it anymore.
Yeah, I think the best way is, collecting, I think, has a couple different meanings depending on how you do it, but ease into it and ease out of it if you're not having fun. I wanted at one point to get a full set of NES games, and I did. I burned out on it in like 2002. I sold a bunch off.
Quitter.
Eat it. And then now I just buy what you want. You can still curate your collection and not have to have everything. You don't really need that Power Golf for the TurboGrafx 16. You don't.
I think I do.
Not only that, look, try not to burn yourself out with it either.
Pace yourself.
It's stupid. Like no matter what I'm doing, if I'm at work, I'm driving around, I'll see a pawn shop, and I can't not stop, so I'll pull over. And there've been times when I'm like, man, I don't want to collect anymore. I don't want to do this anymore, just because it hadn't been fun for a while because of the price of things. The price is killing the fun. You want to move some stuff, Jay? You want to sell some stuff? And then no, I don't. And then I go to a flea market and I'll buy like 172 games for like $5, and I'm like, okay, it's fun again. So just
wait, that's the reason it's fun or not? Because you found a good deal? That's it?
Well, yeah.
That's not really being a game collector. That's being a bargain collector.
I'm getting to the point though, especially like with NES games where
I'm calling you out right now.
Well, hang on, let me explain myself then, Dick. Like with NES especially, I can't just go to a flea market and just go up to any booth and be like, I need that, I need that, I need that. I've gotten to that point where I just have so many that I can't just go buy a Excite Bike. For $2.
I'm still waiting for Pat's inevitable nervous breakdown where he sells all his games.
I'd give it a year and a half. Year and a half. Flea market films? I think it's supposed to be tips. Flea market films?
Incorporated.
I don't know why it's there.
Whatever.
Flea market films. I didn't make this recently. Go early to flea markets. I know Ian loved when he went at 7 a.m. with me one time.
There's a reason I only went once.
Because you get a chance to get there before the other seller.
Hang on, I want to say something about your go early theory. Know your flea market, because in Texas, I go early to the flea markets, vendors won't even be there yet. But obviously in San Diego, you can get there at 5 a.m. like you tweet sometimes.
Doesn't mean you have to
set up
leave early. I usually walk around 2 or 3 times and you'll find stuff, people still putting stuff out, So basically.
Yeah, but then you're that guy who's like, gun of games, and their truck isn't even unloaded yet.
No, I don't do that always.
Do you still wear that floppy hat?
You do.
I don't have the floppy hat anymore.
Good.
I wear the straw hat.
Good, I'm glad.
Haggle at flea markets, get a good deal. Be vigilant, resellers lurk about. And again, that's the negative resellers.
Knives?
I know a guy who almost got stabbed by someone looking at games. I wasn't looking for games that almost stabbed him, but he was too close in personal space to him. Anyway.
Hey, do you ever catch yourself, like, if you're at a flea market and you see someone with a bag of games, like, so what'd you get?
Yeah, I do that.
Yeah.
And you can get deals without being shitty. What that means is this. You don't have to lie to get good deals. You don't have to say, my 6-year-old kid had the game. You don't have to say, my mom's dying of cancer. She loves playing, stadium events. You don't have to do that.
She wants to run on the power pad just one more time.
One more time. You don't have to do that. You don't have to lie about the price of stuff. You don't say, all these games are worthless. It's just, don't do that. Other topics. We had other topics?
We have no
what to do and how to shop in a retro game store. Ian, you work in a game store.
All right, so a couple of tips. I know that I resell, and that makes me the enemy. It's fine.
No, it doesn't, because people come to you to sell their games.
Well, right. First, you have the option. But anyways, there are a couple of things. Prices at a retail shop can sometimes be higher. There's bills to pay, rent to pay. But there are things that you can get for a good deal at a retail shop. The number one thing if you're a collector is if you're trying to find obscurities to fill out spots in your collection. The example I always use is something like Tecmo Cup Soccer Game. Okay, not a common game. It goes for a little bit. It's not a game. Yeah, it's not a game anyone is going to walk in off the street and just buy because they say, oh, this is what I want to play. So I can either price it at its going rate, and it's not going to move because people want to find it for a deal, or I drop it to half its price because the only person who's going to buy it is a collector who needs to fill that spot in his collection. And then I've made a friend because I've sold it at a deal, and then they're going to come back and they're going to spend more money in the store. So you can find those weird things that you wouldn't normally think to find in a retail store for a reasonable price.
That'll vary though, because some people won't care and just price it up at some retro game
Well,
shops.
I'm not saying everyone, but you know, I do think better stores would do this. The
Well,
other thing,
because they can't sit on their inventory. They have to make money
Right.
to pay rent. Yeah.
The other thing is, you know, it's always talked about, but people see, you know, copies of something like Super Mario 3 going for more than the going value. Well, you know what? People buy Nintendo, it's the first game they want. It's good for us around the holidays. But it's good for you too, because if you're in this long enough, you're going to get a bunch of doubles, you know? You're going to get doubles of things like Zelda and Mario 3 and Mario 2. And you know what? If we're charging more for them and we're a store worth our salt, we're going to give you more credit for it. Pat actually did it at our store. You build up the doubles and you take them in, and you get a ton of credit for games that you would not get that much cash for if you sold them. And then you use them and you buy the stuff that's more expensive that you can't find.
Credit that I have no idea what to do with, by the way. But
I'll take
Because
it.
you have everything. But still, I mean, these are things that you can actually use to your advantage.
okay. What is driving up prices? Well, we spoke
talked
about
about
this. Speculation. People that are buying 30 copies of Flintstones Dinosaur Peak and trying to manipulate the prices, which is happening.
I think 30 might be an exaggeration.
And on that note, one thing we did not talk about was counterfeit games, which is becoming more and more common for even stuff like Earthbound.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. Well,
It has happened?
Both. Yeah, especially with the NES, because I've gotten a lot of emails from people that are like, oh man, I found what I think is a prototype of Earthbound on the NES, and it's like got a printed label, like the, you know, artwork and stuff like this. I'm like, no, that's
But
not.
even stuff like Flintstones Dinosaur Peak, which has, you know, quintupled in value in like 2 years. Because again, people are speculating on it and buying like 10 copies of it. People are starting to buy copies. I saw one report, at least in Europe, a Europe to Europe deal, where it had a nice label. It was a printout label, opened it up. It was a custom ROM board inside.
I'm actually surprised there's not more of that going on.
But it's
You're
gonna
probably going to
happen.
see more in the next few years. You have to be very, very careful on eBay.
Look at the label quality of any really expensive game. Know where it's coming from, and do your research. Look for inaccuracies.
Actually, and it's weird because I don't know if this is an honest mistake or what, but I have an eBay search alert for like Donkey Kong competition cart for Super Nintendo. And every week, the same one comes up. Someone selling just a regular Donkey Kong country cart for $10, but in the title it says Donkey Kong Country competition cart. Like, are they just hoping someone isn't paying attention at some point and think that they can get this for this $500,000 game for $10? That's eBay can be skeezy.
Yeah. So again, collecting versus investing. We talked about that. We talked about what the difference is between being an investor and a game collector. Market crash. I get asked this a bunch. Ian gets asked that. This is not like an easy thing to answer, and it's probably system specific. I would
It's
say
definitely system specific. I don't think it's hobby wide.
there have been crashes. Atari game crashes happened about 10 years ago.
I don't think the Nintendo will ever crash like the Atari did, but you know, you will get to a point where enough people get into it and the prices will get high enough and people will stop paying the price. So, you know, rarities will always be rare and worth money, but the price, it can't just keep going up. At some point, it's going to drop again. It might not be as low as it ever was, but it's going to, I feel like at some point, it's going to hit a middle. And we've seen that with some of the games, I think, already.
It happened with Earthbound.
Yeah.
No.
Earthbound was going up to like $250 loose, and then all of a sudden, then it went down.
It's gone down a little bit since they released it on the
I
Wii
think
U.
the
but it's
reason
still really
Earthbound went
high.
down is because you can get it on Virtual Console for like $10.
And so I think that's a feedback loop because now you have more people trying it on Wii U and they're like, oh, I'm a collector and I love this game that I just tried. I'm going to get it.
Well, that's what I always say. When it comes to like digital re-releases, it will maybe lower the price to a degree, but yes, it does introduce people to it. And if you love a game, you're going to want a physical copy of it. So there's always going to be a market for Earthbound. I imagine Earthbound will probably hit maybe 150 at some point within the next year. I would hope. I think.
Loose?
Loose.
It already has.
125.
I think it's almost up to 200 now.
No, I'm talking like going down.
Oh.
I feel like at some point it's going to settle back down. I mean, now we're just speculating and talking, but
okay.
you know.
Yeah.
But the point is that like a game like Little Samson, there has to be a point where people are just going to say, no, that is too much money to spend on a dumb game. It's a good game. I mean, a dumb NES game. I'm not spending $1,200 on Little Samson. There is a point. I was priced out of the state events market at $1,000. I said, that's too much.
Right.
And now it's at $3,000. There has to be a point where some rationale comes and be like, no, I'm not paying that much for that game. And at that point, when that point happens, that's when a crash starts.
Anything is,
For the system.
not just games, but anything is only worth what other people will pay for it.
Yes.
Nothing has inherent value.
And eventually what's going to happen then is you have speculators are going to be holding the majority of the high-priced games. They can't hold on to it forever. They'll either get older, or they'll say, I invested money into these games. I bought these games high to sell higher, and then they have to get rid of them at some point. They can't hold on to the games forever. At that point, that's when if you see at some point 25, 30 Dinosaur Peaks being sold within 2 months, the prices will go down, because naturally they'll have to. No one can afford to buy 30 Flintstones at one time and spend 30 grand. You'd hope. So.
It's a weird thing about human nature is that the bursts and bubbles, or bubbles and bursts, it can happen with what?
Is that a pirate game?
Yes. I mean, it can happen with the housing market or tulip bulbs or Beanie Babies. Video games are not unique. So.
Cool. Other panels we have going on. We're going to do a Q&A too. We have other panels. Video Game Years Live, 93 we're doing live at 4 p.m. panels 2. I'm involved with a new show concept panel called Super Riff Brothers. That's tonight at Friday in panels 3 with Brennan Frost and Pro Jared. On Being Human, the Retro TV band, they're performing Saturday night. I think it's 7 o'clock. It's the main stage.
Main stage, yeah.
Main stage. They are insanely good. And then the Retro TV panel, it's actually 10 o'clock. Oops, Saturday night. I'm going to do this for you guys. It's 10 o'clock. So we're going to do a Q&A now. We got about half hour, 25 minutes. So anyone who has any questions?
Can we get a mic down there?
Can we get a mic down here? Is that possible or no? We don't know. Okay, so how about we make a line up front? So we make a line up front.
No one wants to line up.
No one wants to line up?
Pick people.
You got it. Okay, we have
Perfect.
us here. Okay.
All right.
Oh, they are going to do a line. They're going to do a
All
line.
right. Well,
Can we get a mic down here for this
do a
one?
line of 3 people.
Do we have pancakes?
There.
We don't have pancakes to give away. All right, what's your question, sir?
No mic.
Well, they're soldered down, so the oxidation doesn't really matter because the point of contact is, very physical connection. The thing that kills the solid state devices is things like bit rot. Essentially just like bits randomly flip due to, this sounds weird, but like cosmic rays and things like that just kind of coming through. I'm serious. Shut your face.
Let's break out the
And the problem. I've looked into this more with cartridges and not as much with optical media. But I think the main problem there is just it's plastic and it's going to degrade a little bit faster. So, of course, there's things you can do to keep your games, better longer.
Grade them.
obviously.
Get them slabbed. Grade your games.
Put them in the vegetable crisper.
Actually, no, seriously, keeping them out of sunlight or climate controlled. You don't stick them in your attic if you live in Manitoba or something like that. But and they'll last a bit longer. But preserving, it's the same thing with preserving. I did jellies.
Preserving jellies.
Yes, strawberries.
Treat your games like strawberries.
Yes.
Okay, what was the second question?
I did an interesting panel with the ACAM guys up in PAX East this past year, but it's kind of like the preservation of movies,
Yeah.
People didn't even think about preserving them for the longest time, and now like 90% of movies made before 1930 are gone forever. Doctor Who, the BBC for the longest time did not consider saving those episodes, and a lot of them are gone forever. And so only now is preservation of video games becoming a cognizant thing. That was a really long answer to your question.
It
Sorry.
really was.
Basically, if you take care of your shit, you're going to get the most use out of it. in other words.
All right, next question. Oh, Sam, you have another question?
Yeah.
Do you follow any of the stuff, like, are you starting collecting, like, Xbox 360? Like, for example, Marvel just pulled its license on a bunch of games, including, like, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 with the Deadpool game. So I was wondering, like, buying that factory seals and holding on to it for, like, 10 years, 12 years.
Why would you hold on to it?
Because maybe,
What?
speculating now.
Because it'd be worth money? If you want to collect it, I don't. Are you guys just doodling up here? What are you guys doing?
Yeah, we're over here writing love notes to each other.
boring
Mind
you?
your business.
Yeah, are we boring? Is the panel boring? Would you like to leave?
I made that for Joey.
Thank you. Ruse Optical Preserves. It's delicious.
It's a jelly jar.
Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, if you want to collect whatever you want to collect 360 games, obviously I'm not into that, but
Well, for anyone who didn't hear, the question was about how some licenses are
Writing out for
pulled for modern games like
Yeah.
Marvel vs. Capcom, and should you pick them up? Again, that is speculating. So.
no. Oh.
Well,
It's difficult.
That's the first
Smart ass.
next one.
Because no one gives a crap about the Genesis.
Genesis is not. Genesis is not.
I mean, no. I mean, I like the
Well,
Genesis,
okay, look,
but
I've
look,
got a
hang on,
theory
wait
on
a second.
Ian's got a theory.
Wait, let me clarify. When it comes to like, no one gives a shit about the Genesis.
I
That's why.
love the Genesis, but I mean, I've done retail for 8 years now, managing the store, and no one buys it. And it's just a random theory that I thought up sitting there bored one day waiting for my burrito. And Sega doesn't make systems anymore. Sega's a publisher, and it's not like they publish a ton of. They publish some good stuff. Don't kill me. I love Sega. They don't publish a ton of great stuff. They're not in the public's eye as much as they used to be. People who collect, more people who are getting into collecting are younger and younger. So Nintendo makes sense because they see modern Nintendo systems and they want to see where this stuff comes from. So they go back to the old Nintendo systems. There's nothing that constantly reminds people of Sega to make them go back. So only the people who are of age who remember Sega are generally going to go after it. That's not the only reason, but I do think it is part of it. It's not something that's constantly talked about.
But other Sega systems like Dreamcast and Saturn are, would you say, more collectible? It seems to be.
I don't.
Maybe
I don't.
not.
They're very small collector markets.
They're just more
Sega Saturn.
excited, I guess, about.
I think the Master System gets the exception simply because it's 8-bit. So people who finish up their Nintendo collections just make the lateral move to.
And it was relatively cheap to.
Yeah, so
Get
they
into
make
it.
that move. And I think kids who collect Super Nintendo, adults too, whatever. I'm not whatever ages. When they finish up Super, they'll move into Genesis because Genesis, much like Master System, is very cheap right now to collect and buy for. But yeah, it's not that popular.
That's actually very true. I wouldn't be surprised if Genesis became
Give it
a hotter collectible
2 years. Give it 2
in a
years.
few years. Yeah, because that's me. I'm working on my Super Nintendo collection now, and I'm like, at some point I'll get to Genesis. There's probably a lot of people that are thinking that too.
You don't have to agree with it, but that's our opinion. Our question up front.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, is there any way to get more of a NeoGeo game other than the old viewers? As in AES games?
That's tough. The NeoGeo is a whole other beast. And how do you get an AES game?
What was the question?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, let's repeat the question. Is there any way? Well, we can repeat the question. Is there any way to get NeoGeo games other than from dealers? Because it's a
Hope you run across it at a flea market.
No, I mean, the little I know about the AES collecting scene is that it is something that you do through knowing people, but not in the good way we talked about. It's just a bunch of people with a lot of money exchanging a lot of money over and over again. I
So
don't
bankers.
know that finding an AES game in the wild is. I just don't see that really happening.
No.
That's all pretty much been snatched up. It's all kind of in
The problem
private
is
hands.
that no one bought the AES. It was so expensive that I don't think I knew anyone as a kid that had one. Or you always hear about one kid that had one, in your high school. So it's like, okay. So yeah, at this point, all the AES games are with the collectors.
Yeah.
All of them. There's none you're going to find at the swap meet. None. So I mean, it's a special case, unfortunately. You have to pay. Or get an MVS consoleized, buy the MVS arcade games, which are worth like 10% of the price.
I have the adapter for my AES.
That's the way to do it.
That's where you go. Metal Slug, AES game, $1,000. MVS, what, like 100 or whatever it is? It's
50.
or 50.
I think it's more like 5,000.
How about in the back with the green hat? Is that Ninja Turtles? Oh, awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks.
That was all me.
I couldn't agree more with everything you said. I've actually just gotten into yard sailing this year. I grew up with Super Nintendo, NES, and all that kind of stuff, and that is the best place to find deals. I actually resell doubles and I try to undercut. I sell on Amazon and I undercut what I see to try to help bring stuff down.
Sure.
Walk away.
Yeah, okay,
Walk
so,
away,
okay.
seriously.
For people that didn't hear that, so basically he's saying about even going to a yard sale, you'll have people that are say that this is collectible and price and based off eBay prices. They're trying to get eBay prices, not on eBay. What do you do when that happens?
Look, here's the way I see it. If I'm somewhere, someone's yard or a booth at a flea market or something, you need my money more than I need your product. So if you don't want to work with me on something, later, bitch. I'm walking. That's it. So.
Yeah, it's gotten to the point, and I see it too, not because I'm out at yard sales or flea markets, but people will come into the store and tell me that our prices are cheaper than the swap meet. And that's ridiculous. When a brick and mortar store that offers a warranty and has hours posted is selling things for cheaper than what people are trying to get.
I could see in some games that being the case. A lot of flea market vendors, well, where I'm at anyways, I can't speak for everyone, but you'll have like Mario, anything Zelda in the title, they run up the price because that's what people are looking for. But that same flea market vendor that has like Mario 64 trying to get $30 out of it, you'll find a stadium events for $5 right next to it because they're uneducated.
Or more.
So don't get your Mario and Zelda from assholes like that. Go look for the more rare stuff.
Well, yeah. Well, they're going to have their $70 Game Boy Pocket for a year and a half. No one's going to buy it.
The thing is, you have to be very patient. When
See, you got to remember too, though. There's a lot of, for lack of a better word, a lot of dumbasses out there who will pay that money for that product, and that's why they charge it.
I would still say flea markets and yard sales are probably the best places
I
to
love
find
yard sales.
great deals, but you do have to be very patient. And we didn't touch on this, but I believe it's very much dependent on where in the country you are.
Yeah,
absolutely.
If you got Texas, you got San Diego. Apparently, those are meccas for old games. Raleigh, North Carolina, not so much. I go to like the largest flea market in the state and only find copies of NASCAR 2006 for the 360. So, not so much.
All right. How about hockey helmet in the back? It's a nice helmet. All right.
But the garage sale thing, I saw I think there's a TV show coming out, saying garage sales wars, something like that.
Probably.
Garage sales wars?
Get out there now. It's going to be open, honestly. I think for enormous like that. Like, you see storage wars and all that rest of the shit. Yeah. So I just want to know that.
Apparently, there's going to be a garage sales wars show coming out. Does not surprise me.
That's cool.
Someone else pick someone. You guys pick someone for a question.
Front row.
How do you find Sega Saturn games?
Your best bet for a system like the question is how do you find Sega Saturn games? For any system like that where not a lot of people bought like TurboGrafx, Sega Saturn, your only bet is to get it really from the person who's dumping it who had it originally. And then you'll usually find, the only times I found TurboGrafx stuff literally 4 times in 12, 13 years ago into flea markets. And every time you find with like 10 games. And that's, or more. There was one time I found a reseller guy right before me who didn't know nothing about it. He found a Sega CD with the Super System 3.0 cart and about 35 CD and games together. Someone's full collection. That's really your only bet for something like that, unfortunately. Yeah.
I also think, because I do this with PC Engine, is make a couple friends online that live in different parts of the country, and everyone keep an eye out for each other, because they're tough stuff to come by. So if you see it, you grab it and you send the doubles off to your buddy, and you effectively double, triple, quadruple, the amount of space you're covering with a hard to find system.
Ian, you want to choose something?
My question is, Reposted Genesis rocks, so you're wrong on that one.
We didn't say it didn't rock. It's
It's
an
a-
awesome
it's a-
system. It's just not popular
It's
right
an
now.
okay system.
What's the one in your guys' collection that is a guilty pleasure? You'll play, you know it sucks.
For
Back to the
me-
Future. Okay, question is, what's the guilty pleasure in your collection that you play even though it sucks? Back to the Future for the NES.
And you're
That
good
can
at it,
Still
too.
beid in 20 minutes.
Yes, I've
I'm going to
witnessed
show it
that.
to you
That's
guys
true,
again because
Okay.
Ian hasn't seen
Okay,
it yet.
That's right.
It's not that bad.
I always get kicked out when we do our NES Marathon. I love playing Bible Adventures. I just love that game. I do.
I like Karate Kid.
I like kids games like Lion King, Aladdin, You know, but those didn't suck. Right?
Those are good games.
Those are good games.
I'm
That's
just
not a
saying,
guilty
I mean,
pleasure.
Barbie and
Tell me like a real
If
guilty
Billy was here,
pleasure.
he would say
Hannah
Little,
Montana.
if Billy was here, he would say Little Mermaid for the NES, which is actually a really good game.
Probably would.
How about someone?
Joey Pixel.
Someone more in the back.
Oh.
Glasses. Blue shirt. You, sir.
Yes.
What's the feeling of buying like NES, 3DS games like in lots? 'Cause I've actually found some good deals on eBay. You know, I don't know if it's reason seller that don't have collection, but I found the Mac Races for about $75.
$75 with a bunch of games. Yeah, so buying in lots. Well, buying lots is the way to go. That's how I completed my collection. That's how I'm currently completing my Sega Master System collection. Buying in lots. So what happens is in lots on eBay, they're cheaper in general because people aren't usually searching for stuff, or they only want one game, not like me, and build up 50 doubles. You know, so what will happen is you'll see a game that's harder to find. It may not be dirt cheap, but you'll get like the game you want and like 20 other games for like the same price maybe of just that one game you normally find. So that is a way to complete a collection without going broke. Because then you can sell those games or you can trade those
Yeah,
games.
I started like that. I bought lots and pick out what I needed and just resold the rest. But I wasn't, trying to be a reseller, so to speak.
No, you can. No, I'm not saying you can't sell games, but don't gouge people to death when you do it. That's the difference.
Exactly.
Right.
Do you have any tips for like, say I go on eBay or something, right? Like some for what to specifically search for looking for lots because I live in New York City and it's terrible for
Okay, so what you want to do, the question is when you search on eBay, you want lots, you have to click on search description as well because they'll list all the games. So like if someone lists Sega Master System lot or someone lists NES game lot, 20 games, you want to search for the games you're looking for and it'll come up in the description. That's really the only way to do it. And you'll see it. Be vague?
Yeah, like not be specific like all over NES. Like sometimes people will type in something like video game lot or something.
Yeah, that works too. It's very rare now because eBay helps dumb people now know what they're selling.
Yeah,
they do.
Yeah. Used to be able to also, well, I don't know if you can still like do misspellings of certain things.
Misspellings do happen still. Misspellings, there actually are search tools where it'll search for like variants of words.
Yeah.
That's possible, but it's really rare to see.
Yeah, I'm curious what the worst experience happened.
Oh, this will be good. The question is,
I'm not going to really get into it because it sucked, but I actually had someone threaten to break my bones a week ago. that was fun. That was fun. They called me a lot of names that I won't repeat here, and then they said they'd be back at 8 o'clock to break my bones. They weren't specific about what bones.
Ian,
Just-
I apologize,
just
Ian.
my
I
bones.
was not in a good mood. Okay. How
Green-
about
green shirt down here.
over here?
Green shirt?
Oh, green shirt. Oh.
So do you think that game studios or developers or publishers can be affected and prices being inflated in the same way that consoles do? Because I've been trying to complete my working designs collection, and I love those games, they're great stuff, but I've noticed that it's fluctuating on consoles. I don't know if that's more of a based on the console the games are on, or the publishers getting more.
It's the publisher. I mean, you'll
well,
see things
wait,
like Treasure.
so
working
the question
designs.
is, do you think that publishers can, like people can go for collections of
Well, sure.
publishers and that can affect the price, like working designs? Yeah, definitely.
Oh, definitely.
Treasure,
Those are all
Treasure
great.
is great.
Square, early Enix. I mean, all that stuff is definitely affected based on the branding as well as the system.
How about you in the jacket?
Yeah, I just wanted your opinion. I learned this week that Price Charting is rolling out a free automatic eBay sniping program for anyone to use. So I was wondering what you're thinking of, like, as eBay sniping programs start to become free and like.
They've been free for years.
eBay sniping programs.
There's websites you can go on that. Yeah, there's websites you can go on for years that you can put in snipes and they're free.
Have you
So-
used them?
Yeah, of course.
So you like them?
eBay snipe programs are fine.
All right.
It's like with smartphones and like misspellings on eBay. We're gonna deals on eBay gonna get more homogenized over time.
We're already there. There's already a lot of these big sellers on eBay, the big ones you see ads for on websites like Lukey Games. They have programs and/or people that are constantly searching for eBay listings that are cheap or keywords come up. They're buying dozens and dozens of game lots every day and dozens of lower priced, items. So that's already happening, unfortunately. It's hard to fight it. It just makes getting good deals harder, How about purple in the back?
Getting back to the topic of games that suck, obviously there's a lot of games that are rare and worth a lot of money. As collectors yourself, what's your personal opinion on how to determine its value besides its rarity? And how much would you spend on a game that's rare even though it's bad?
So the question is, how do you determine the price of a game even though you know it's bad?
How much would you spend on a bad game, even if it's rare?
It comes out to like, I don't know, your budget? How bad you want to own a crappy game?
How bad do you want that game in your collection, basically?
It depends what kind of collector you are. For instance, the only game that I would spend a lot of money on would be Sapphire for PC Engine, because I like it and I want to play it. I'm not going to spend money on a bad game. I'm not going to spend 50 on a bad game. I'm not going to spend 500. But it depends on how complete you want things.
Yeah, I would definitely be willing to spend $100, say, on EVO Search for Eden, as opposed to Harvest Moon. Not that Harvest Moon's a terrible game, but it's not that great.
Well, you can
compared
spend $80 on it with the box.
with the box.
Well, then that's his answer. That's his answer, $80.
$80.
Yes.
Next. How about Justin?
Long time fan. My big question actually is more along the lines of emulation. With more and more games being able to be emulated, how much do you see that becoming more of a, well, I could collect physical cards or I could collect this ROM, because eventually it will degenerate. If these CDs and these cards are going to be lose their battery life, their connectivities, they're going to, the plastics will be break, and I'm not going to be able to play these anymore.
Just find another
I've
copy,
gotten this
man.
question before.
Cards, and why is
Yeah.
I'll put it into a card that I can pop into my physical machine.
So the question real quick is that, is emulation going to have a negative effect on people's interest? And the answer is it never has. It's only increased it.
Yeah, I was gonna. This is actually very heavy on the topic of video game preservation, and how we are going to preserve these games. Because a lot of people will say, well, you know, it's a good thing we have emulation and ROMs, so we can save these games and we can store them in other media for future use. I think.
Yeah.
Probably all of it. When emulation got really big a little over a decade ago, I know when I got to college and I was like, emulators exist? I'm downloading every Super Nintendo game that existed. And it's like, well, that's fun, but it doesn't stop me from wanting to go collect. In fact, that might make me, I might go play a game and be like, oh, this is a great game. I want a physical copy just because I'm, a magpie.
It only helps. I mean,
They collect things.
for every one person I get who comes into the store and says, I don't want to buy these, I can get them all on my computer for free, like they just discovered emulation yesterday. I get 10 people who come in and they buy games specifically because they were able to try them out on an emulator first, and they know, okay, I want this. And I liked where you were going, because of the degradation, and that's a different conversation about preservation. But I think you're thinking about it more than most people do. I don't think anyone's actually thinking about it in that way yet. But it is good that we have emulation for that reason. But yeah, it only helps sales. It only helps the actual physical collecting of the hobby, I think.
That's how I got into buying games in the late 90s, because I was playing them on emulator. Besides websites like TSR's and NES Archive.
Yeah, and there are actually archives in certain, like Stanford, I believe. There was a news article earlier this year where the largest PC video game collector, since the 80s, he just had tons and tons, and he died fairly recently. I unfortunately can't remember his name, but he donated his whole collection to a couple of universities, and Stanford, I believe, was one of them. And so what they're doing is that they're digitizing not just the games and collecting the emulation, but as ROMs, but they're scanning the manuals and the artwork and stuff like that to create an actual archive, digital archive of all these games, from PC games from the 80s, which frankly are getting to that point where they're just disappearing.
We didn't talk about that. PC game collecting is still relatively unknown, and not many people are doing it. I've been doing it for a few years now. There are a lot of games from the 80s that unfortunately are almost like old films that are lost, because a lot of regional releases, people making them and selling them in the next town, that people are trying to preserve. And there's something called the DOS project, where they're trying to get every DOS program and game and get it, and they have a list of all of them, but there's so many that are missing that they can't find.
So the short answer is that emulation and ROMs are very important for preservation, and I don't think any of us believe that hurts collecting as a hobby.
No.
It probably helps it, if anything.
So we have time for one or two more questions. So I don't want to be pressured. Someone else pick.
Shaved head down here. Just handing it for a while.
Over the time you collect many games that you decided to like Bad Edge and just with all this time never really got to play them. Do you ever like decide like the year I'm just gonna not collect, just finish all the games I wanted to play or have done that already?
So the question is, do you ever take breaks from collecting because you're just inundated with games, I guess?
And just play them. I haven't gotten there yet, but there are times where I
Yeah.
feel like I want to just play some of these games. Ian always yells at me because I say, "Hey Ian, I picked up this game for PlayStation." He's like, "You're not going to play that. Why did you get that?" That's like the first thing he says. I'm like, "Well, I'll maybe get around to it eventually."
won't.
I take
Ever.
breaks.
One more question.
Right there.
You guys are all collectors. What is your favorite collection piece each one of you? And then I got one more question.
Favorite question, please.
Favorite piece
Like
of our
just-
collection is the question.
Personal or worth the most money, or what do you?
Your
What do you
favorite.
like? What's your favorite?
Oh, god damn.
Too slow. All right, Earthbound prototype for NES.
Come back to me.
M82 demonstration store unit.
Two real quick, my Dracula X for the PC Engine, just because it's a freaking blast to play, and I have a Valkyrie profile that my friend gave me before I moved.
Oh, did Joey go yet?
Yes.
Shit, really? It's on. My PlayStation 3. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that right now.
And on that great note, guys, we're out of time, Jay. But thanks for coming out.